Stumble forward, stumble forward. The 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 stumble.
I'd like to welcome Begonia to the Stumble Forward. Begonia is Winnipeg's favorite daughter and musical powerhouse, Alexa Dirks. She has been enjoying next big thing status since her first release, Lady in Mind, in 2017. She's a Juno and Polaris Prize nominated artist, and her most recent record, Powder Blue, has landed on the 2023 Polaris shortlist. She's a central figure in Winnipeg's burgeoning music scene, and everybody I know who knows or works with Begonia says it's a great injustice that she's not already a household name. Welcome, Begonia.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth. Anybody I know who knows you is like, this was the only, in their minds, you're the most talented person that they currently know. So how does that feel? Is that too much pressure? Do you kind of want that sort of status to go away? Where are you at with that?
Well, that's very flattering. Definitely.
I think it's just true. I mean, it's proof is in the pudding. I've seen you live. I've listened to some of the records and I hear the singles, and I mean, I think it's clear that you're gifted, and that obvious thing is what is attracting people to you. Isn't that true?
Well, I hope so. I feel like I just try to do what I do, and if people connect with it in that way, I'm flattered and happy about that. We also have some mutual friends that are very kind to me. So Marcus Paquin was just in my backyard a couple days ago hanging out.
Was he?
Yeah, we talked about you. You know, we've got some like loving pals in the mix here.
We have some loving pals. So I was listening to some of your interviews and doing some reading and stuff, and you're what I guess I like to call a lifer. It sounds like you've sort of been singing since you were a kid, that there was music in your house, you grew up in the church singing, even though that your parents weren't necessarily, musical artists. Music was a top priority, it sounded like, in your house, and it sounded like you were always in bands. Then there was Chic Gamine, now there's Begonia. Mm-hmm. People like you, other lifers, it's almost like they get on the artist track when they're young and they don't get off. It's like the life that chooses them, not the life that they choose. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't really have an example of like how to do it as a job, so I just did it. I didn't even actually know that it was a job, really. Like, I remember being 11 years old, and do you remember the artist Charlotte Church, opera singer, was like a young prodigy from like the UK? And I remember watching this 11, and I was the same age as her, watching her on TV and going to my room and sobbing, like feeling this heartache that I couldn't quite understand, because I was like, I want to do that, but I don't even understand what it is or how it works or how a child gets that kind of recognition. I want to be that operatic child. I'm glad I did not get the career that I wanted when I was a Christian opera loving child. Like, I think that would have been a bad trajectory for me at this point. But like, I did have that, this sense of like deep longing and this heartache in me of like just needing to do this but not fully understanding what, like, it just felt bigger than me, what it even was. And then it was like just singing kind of, it was like one foot in front of the next, and then the path kept revealing itself. That's how it always feels for me. It still feels like that. It's like, I think I have all these goals and dreams, but I don't necessarily have like, okay, here's the 5-year plan, and then I've reached the mountain peak and then it's over. It's like, no, I think I have all these dreams and ideas, and then I take one step forward, and then it's like, oh, actually the path is that way, not this way. And then, so it's just like this reminder always just to be open to the world and the creative path, because it's always shifting and changing, but it's always been like in me, I feel.
Yeah, I think, without this interview or this chat devolving into, we're a lot alike and here's all the reasons how, I totally get a lot of the influences in your early life, because I had a dad who played records 24 hours a day in our house, and I grew up in the United Church singing, and was able to sort of, we grew up in the deep rurals, and my brother and I were the only young people at the church. So when you're the young people in the church, you're given more or less carte blanche to just sing and read the Old and New Testament passages or whatever. And it's a great opportunity when you're a kid to be in front of a loving audience, for lack of a better.
For sure. And if you have a passion, like I definitely had people around me that are like, oh, you like to do this and you have enough confidence, take a microphone and go up during when they're passing out the offering and sing us a song of your choice. Like, so I had a friend of mine who lived kitty corner to my house, and we were both in church together, and we would just like, she played guitar and I would be like, what about this one? What about this one? We played just some folk songs that were like spiritually leaning, but just to see how far we could kind of push it without knowing that that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The minister at our church had asked my brother and I to come up with something dark for Good Friday, and we played Enter Sandy.
Did you tell them what you were going to play before you?
No, we just surprised. But nobody really knew what it was, but it had the right textural atmosphere, and everybody sort of bought it. And my brother and I were like, high five.
I mean, the United Church, let us be fair.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Loosey-goosey.
Yeah, that's all I got to say. It's different.
It's different, all right. It's true. I think in many ways, it's why I can look back on my church years when I was a kid with a great fondness, because it didn't, none of it was wrapped up in a sort of piety that was cumbersome or difficult or,
or kind of like the doors are closed, only these people are allowed in, or like whatever. Yeah.
It's sad for me that in some ways the church experience is so widely different for everybody, because what I feel is lost in our sort of mostly secular world, two big things that I loved when I was a kid. A, singing in public together with other people. There's almost no other place you can do that unless you're at church. As well as the intermingling of generations. Like old and young people don't get many opportunities to hang out in other places. And I think there's something valuable about that. Do you have any thoughts on any of this stuff?
I 100% agree. And that was the thing that always drew me back, was I think the community energy more than anything else. And the church I grew up in, to be fair, was a motley crew of a lot of freaks from all over the place. Like, and it wasn't the mega church right across the street. There was the mega church, and then there was us. And I have fond memories of growing up in that church. It was when I kind of veered into the more mega church evangelical. I got swept away in the emotion of that then things got a little more Enter Sandman for me. But it was like before that, like as a child, I remember running around the same thing, like just carte blanche. There's not a ton of kids in the church. We're running around and people are like, oh, you have a passion? I'd love to encourage you. And I feel like if I wouldn't have had that encouragement, I don't think I would have had the same, to say it like, I don't know how to say it, like sense of ego or like self-importance or something in some way.
It's a natural born confidence.
Like, but when people say, oh, you're so good. Oh yeah, you got to do that as a kid. You're like, oh, I am so good. But I listen back to some of those things and it's like, yeah, sure. I had a natural talent or like a passion, but I wasn't amazing. Like, so to have people say that, it kind of allowed me to continue to feel like I could take those risks and continue to do it in some ways.
Right. And that's how you become amazing. Like, I think, look, if I'm to extrapolate little bits of your history and overlay it over me, like I'm wondering, I mean, I was always hoping, even as a kid, that I was going to arrive to the scene fully formed. But, yes. you don't. And it's through... my folks sort of shoved my brother and I in church when I was about 5. My brother was about 4. And all of a sudden, it just so happened that we were doing these Bible readings and singing these songs. And it was almost all by accident. But it did start to reinforce something that was like, wow, like I'm being recognized for this thing. And maybe I should take it more seriously, or allow, my inner architecture and my voices to allow that recognition to enter and then to start sort of leaning into it a bit.
For sure. For sure. And one of my mentors at the time, I remember in the church, told me, because I would come off stage and people would be like, "You did a great job," and I'd be like, "No, no, no, it wasn't, not me, not today." Like da da da. Da. And he was like, "You just have to say thank you when people pay you compliments. Just say thank you. They don't want to hear excuses. You just accept it and say thank you." And I was like, "What? Okay." But it was like that resonated, which is also a church word, but that resonated with me in a huge way because it's like, okay, how can I just try to dumb down like the imposter syndrome in me, try to just like move past the wanting to make excuses or wanting to appear to be perfect on whatever level that is. It's like, no, just accept a compliment, say thank you.
That feels like a real old timer show business thing. Like, just say thank you. That's what people want to hear.
Yeah, well, and there are some moments that I don't like if people come up to me and say some, do I swear on this podcast or no?
You're allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people come up to me and say some fucked up shit, and I'm not just gonna be like, "Thank you." I say, "I gotta go."
There was a quote I heard from the bass player from Sonic Youth, who I think is named Kim Deal, I want to say. I'm not a cool kid who knows Sonic Youth, but the quote was something about people pay money to see, for these concert tickets, to see somebody believe in themselves. And when I heard that quote, I was sort of blown away. And
Oh, I like that.
at its sort of fundamentals, like what I guess if I'm to sort of circuitously work back, like that self-belief was being built in church for me and in my school life too, because when I grew up in the 20th century, like there was still choirs and education looked kind of still old-fashioned in that way and had those old-fashioned touchstones like choir and even like a school play and these kinds of things. And like I'm grateful that, and I've heard it floated by a friend of mine who's a songwriting instructor at a college in Toronto. He sort of feels that the generations that came after us, they put their early efforts out online, which of course attracts the attention of trolls and gets people saying all manner of awful things, which, you know, having, again, grown up in a tight little community with a church and stuff, all of my attempts at music and singing were in front of people that loved me and or liked me and or didn't want to be an asshole. Exactly. What do you think about this?
Yes. Oh my gosh, totally. So when I was coming up, like right at the end of high school is when YouTube became a thing for me. And I remember seeing that, but I never felt bold enough to like be alone and post stuff and be like, "Look at me." Because I didn't want to be perceived. I didn't want to be told the negative stuff, I think, in my mind. But I'm kind of happy that I didn't grow up with that side of the internet in some ways, personally speaking, because I don't even know what I would have put up there or what I would have. I think it's good that I had those kinds of restraints. Like I don't. Even now, sometimes I put stuff up on the internet and I'm like, "What the hell did I just do? I don't know why I did that. Take it down now." But then you have to, yeah. I'm just glad that I wasn't a teenager with free reign over my self-image on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. There's lots of things that I mean, my brother and I, like, we're rowdy rural kids, and had we had access to GoPro cameras, like, we would have broken all our bones. Like, we were trying to, like, you know, out jump or out fall or out dive some friends, and it would have been disastrous. If you don't mind me, like, because Chic Amin was 8 years of your life, right? Yeah. So I don't want to ask your age, but that means that it's not like I imagine where you are generationally speaking, that you straddle the internet in a funny way.
Yes.
That it kind of probably entered your life, not right at the beginning, but early enough that it's a thing. Like,
yeah, I'm 36, just turned 36, and graduated in '05. And I remember taking my dad's cell phone that he never uses to school when I was 18, being like, "Got a cell phone," but just I don't even know like what to do with it. Like I'd call my mom being like, "School's over." She's like, "I'm already in the parking lot." Like, why? Like, you don't need this.
Yeah.
But But I still found ways. I feel like there were always ways to compare yourselves to others, no matter what time it was. Like for me, at least. Like then it was like the MySpace era. That was kind of the one that hit me right in the late teens, early 20s kind of thing. And then it felt like you were putting so much of yourself out there. But you look at that now, and it's like you had the ability to put like one photo up, a clip of a song that you thought made you like look pretty cool. Like if you put it on your page, like you'd pick like the coolest one that you thought would like show kind of like, I listen to music. And then just like a little like blog post or like a write up. But I would just go through, I would spend so much time looking through people's pictures being like, wow, they look like they have a great life, or like, whoa, that person's so artistic, or like, oh my gosh, like I need that outfit, or like whatever. Like there's always, the internet was always a strange thing for me, and it still is now, where it's like I do feel like I embrace new things as they come forward. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. I appreciate the positives that like a social media presence can bring to like community and awareness or whatever, but there are some days where I'm just like, I cannot be a fake bitch, so I'm not going to post anything, because I can't go there and be like, hey guys, great day today. Like, I got a big single coming up. Like, I just want to like put my covers over my head and never be perceived ever again some days. So
That might be because you're an authentic person.
I don't know.
The internet asks, I think, a lot of people, and I think authentic people, especially, I think it's tough to always be turning the camera on yourself and always be in a place where you're outputting in that capacity, especially somebody like you who, as soon as you open your mouth and sing, like the room stops and it's like, oh, we know what we're doing here. Like you put a fine point on the whole reason why we discuss Begonia, because of your singing. And it seems all the million miles of accoutrement that sort of follow a young artist around as they're trying to become famous. Like, I guess, so let's talk about the internet again, and Winnipeg in particular. So I was in Winnipeg back in the spring because I was working with Quiet. Do you know Quiet? Ashley is a young artist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were at the No Fun Club, and I got to hang out with some local music people. And I've been booked by Peck Hen for a long time. So I've had some of my like musical team associated to Winnipeg since day one. But I got this feeling this time being out in Winnipeg that, like, without sounding hyperbolic, it's the best music scene in Canada right now. Is that not true?
I mean, I would tend to agree. That's why I feel like I stay. People often, and throughout my entire career, have been like, if you want to make anything of yourself, you got to move to Toronto. Or like, if you want to be cooler, you got to go to Montreal. And I like, don't get me wrong, I love popping in. I have great friends in Montreal, great friends in Toronto, great friends in Vancouver, like the three like trifecta places where the people tell you gotta go. But I go there and I just miss, there's just this like duality here that's like, it's like small town, big city kind of energy, where it's like you go to the coffee shop and you're like, hey neighbor, like, and I live on this block where I'm just on my porch swing all day talking to my neighbors and whatever. And then, and maybe I would feel different if I wasn't traveling as much as I do, but I just love the community here. And I love the music scene here is so rich. And I think because people know, it's almost like this subconscious thing, because we know that we're the underdogs in some way, or like underrated in some ways, that we just work without thinking about, oh, we're going to be on the cover of XYZ thing, or, oh, of course people are going to know. Of course they're going to notice us because we live in XYZ city. So we just make shit. We just make shit with each other, and we encourage each other. It's like and we want to see each other excel.
I feel like the Manitoba Music Society was like one of the best music societies in of all the provincial music societies as well. And it just feels too, the first place I ever had a sold out show in Canada was the West End Cultural Center, and Winnipeg just felt to me like it. First of all, too, it's got a lore of being a music place. Even when I was a kid, I'd never been to Winnipeg. The first time I was there when I was 18, like I knew that Neil Young played there, and that the guess, who had come from there, and that there was a scene that went back decades, and that Winnipeg was to be respected as a town that created great music and knew great music. And so here I had sold my thing out, and then I was like, oh man, this really is a town that seems to want to come out and invest and be loyal as well. I mean, I also sort of feel like that the way that the Winnipeg Folk Festival is woven into the fabric of that city, that being a music fan is almost, it's just one of the requirements to be a proper Winnipegger, like, is to know and be into music. Am I getting this right as an outsider?
Pardon me?
Am I getting this right as an outsider?
I would 100% agree. People love to support, like, I think it also goes back to people just love to support the artists that come from here too, like, be it other artists or music fans, music lovers, like, love to support and see people do well and feel so like I've said this a lot too, going out in Winnipeg, like when I used to go out more. Oh
yeah.
Like, I'd go out and just like see people and be like, oh, I see that person all the time. I may not remember their name, but they feel like my second cousin, or like my like it feels just like you're kind of, when the community gets together, it's like this family reunion of some sort. Like, you see the same people at the same shows, or like, well, and with the Folk Fest, that's like a pride of Winnipeg too, because not only is it just the locals coming to support, people from all over coming, and having been at so many different festivals, and I don't know if you can relate, I just feel like it runs itself so well. And that's something, is from an artist perspective, that you notice immediately how much of a well-oiled machine it is, and how like supported and good you feel. And you're not just like thrown in the middle of a field being like, find your stage, have fun.
It's 100% true. No, it's always been a wonderful festival to get an invite to. Chris Frere, who runs the thing now, he's been booking me in that city for as long as I can remember, and sort of watching how the festival has evolved in the 25 years that I've been going to Winnipeg and playing. It's amazing. I mean, look, the idea of the lifer to me is something I'm obsessed with, because what I find is that I've sort of moved through my own career with a cohort of people that started in and around my age, and that through thick and thin have kind of fought their way through the uphill battle that is trying to keep get and have and keep a music career. Like, I guess you're an interesting age, again, like, because you do straddle the internet, but in my mind, you're in your trying to get famous phase. Would you agree? Like, that's where the Begonia thing is at.
I mean, trying to get famous is a...
I'm being glib. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be cute, but you know what I'm saying? You're on the building
I like
phase.
the word glib. I never hear that word used enough. Glib. Yeah. To be glib, I feel that I'm definitely in a hustle phase. Like, I'm in a phase of like, I am ready to work. I'm ready to tour. I'm ready to continue. And I know that, well, I don't know, but just like based on just seeing other people I love move through the world, the love for touring doesn't always last forever. And the fact that I still have that love in me, then I feel like, okay, well, let's get going then, because I don't want to, like, my body's only getting older. Like, I want to just like keep doing this when I have the love for it. But at the same time, like, for me, my career has always been about foreverness, longevity-ness. Like, this is what I perceivably will do until I die, I hope. And so there's no kind of like, so in the glibness of like trying to get famous, yes, there is absolutely a little morsel of that in what I'm doing, more so than being like famous, more so just like, wouldn't it be so awesome, what I think, to show up anywhere in the world and have 1,000 people come to a show?
Yeah.
To me, like, I don't want to be known in a sense where like I got to be like, don't look at me, I'm wearing my sweatpants today, and like I'm in pictures, like whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. But I would love to just continue to be able to do what I do and increase the level of like the output that I can give if more people show up than that will be easier to do that for me,
Yeah.
really. But I mean, I do feel like I'm in this interesting time where it's like in Canada, I can show up to places and have people show up, not necessarily in the thousands, depending on what city I'm in. But in the States, I'm still very much, and abroad, still very much cutting my teeth and very, to a lot of people, an emerging artist, where it's so funny to be an emerging artist when I've been doing this since I was 19, 18, like on a
Yeah.
touring level. But I try not to like think about it too much in any way because I just want to keep I just want to keep doing it. I don't want to be wrapped up in those like major milestones or goals or whatever to the point where then I'm like, okay, well if I don't hit that by this age or this thing, then that means I'm a failure. And being like a woman aging in music is like it's kind of like once you pass 30 or if you decide to have a baby or like whatever, people are
Mm.
like, you're done.
Yeah.
Old, tired, bored, stupid. Like
Yeah.
it's just like that kind of thing. So I feel like I'm constantly also fighting against that where it's like, okay, yeah, even for example, you asking me my age, it's like, I don't
I didn't ask
no,
your
no,
age.
I
I
know you
said
said I'm not gonna ask you age.
I was making an assumption though,
But
based
at the
on the
same time, it's
information.
just like I try really hard to not care about that shit because it's so easy because it is such a pervasive thing
Mhm.
even in industry stuff where it's like, oh, like people lying about their age or people not wanting to talk about it. And for me, it's like, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
being over 30 and still trying to do this. If someone else thinks that there's something wrong with that, I feel sad. More so with the mindset that that takes up. And that's actually a totally different part of the industry and machine that I'm not really even a part of. So why would I try to like bend to that, if that makes sense?
It makes complete sense. I understand because when I was starting out, music videos were a thing, and being pretty on TV was elemental to your career, kind of. So I
You're
remember,
so
like,
pretty too.
what?
You're so pretty.
It
I
was.
remember as a
It was
youth seeing you doing your thing, moving around
oh
and being
Lord.
like, that is a pretty
Well,
person.
I feel like the prettiness was so short lived. But I brought up the internet a while back because I did want to go back to it, and I'm reposting that we will go back to this idea of the internet because it. But just to talk about you being a live person and listening to you talk about music and the emphasis on your live show, I remember because I put out about a few records before I had a deal, and when I was starting, and I remember when I signed to Universal, the A&R guy said, "Workman, you've been building them one at a time through this silly live touring. You watch when we put our machine behind you, you're gonna blow this shit right up." And it didn't really blow up. It blew up ish. But man, was I glad that I had spent several years on the road winning them one at a
Mhm,
time, the old fashioned way.
mhm,
I think you probably get that,
mhm,
yeah, you can put out the clever TikTok thing and you can be a personality on Reels or whatever it is
mhm.
that's required out there for all these different social media channels. But at the end of the day, how great is it that you get to be the artist that after all the hype, after the TikTok posts, after the scheduled YouTube uploads, that you can just get on stage and blow minds and the internet just disappears. All of a sudden,
Mm.
you're just the real deal. That's great, right?
I love playing live. That's one of my favorite things. It's the only and whatever I'm gonna say all the cliche shit, but it's like the only time where my brain actually stops overthinking everything. From the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I'm like, and then I get on stage and I'm like, just like in the moment for the first time of my day, basically. And I love just like my touring band. The guy, like to me, it's all about the community thing too. And I grew up being in bands forever, like in church, being in bands, and then in bars, playing 5 nights a week in bands, cutting my teeth, and then in Shikamin, being in like this democratic band. So then when I started Begonia, I was like, like feeling on this lonely island, thinking that maybe I was starting a band. I didn't know, like if I just wasn't ready to slow down when
Mm.
my other band ended. So I was like, okay, I'm doing something. Is it a band? Is it my solo project? but it became a solo project. But at the same time, as you probably know, you're maybe in all the photos, but you're not doing this all on your own. You're doing a lot on your own in a vacuum. But at the same time, touring doesn't happen with just you. There's like every person around you. And for me, my band, whom I love so dearly and who we created such a family bond, I don't pay them enough to be as nice to me as they are and as good as they are. They're just good. Like, and we respect each other. And that's to me the thrill of my life, is creating those bonds and living those highs and lows, like with my family. Like, yeah.
Yeah, your instincts are they resonate with me, because it does feel like they're slightly older version music business instincts.
Yeah.
So to revisit this idea of the internet in Winnipeg for a second, I purposely sat down with some Winnipeg music business people. I had a few meetings when I was there at No Fun, and what I kept hearing was, thanks to the internet, this idea that any Winnipeg artist who has been told for time immemorial that they have to move to Toronto in order to make a go of it. It felt like everybody I was talking to in the Winnipeg music scene was saying, thank God the internet is here and saved us. Now we, instead of spending $700 to fly from Winnipeg to Toronto for some cockamamie event, now we can just go to London, England, and just get the job done.
Yeah.
Or now we can just fly to New York City and get the job done. We can run a global music business from Winnipeg just as effectively as any other city in the world, and that the internet has in some ways allowed Winnipeg to sit back in its sort of self-pride and community-powered energy and go, yeah, let's take on the world from this cold, dark, mosquito and hornet-infested city.
From this
because now
beautiful
we can't.
hole that we live in. Yeah, I would 100% agree, and I say that all the time too. It's just like, I've said that so many times when people are like, you got to move. But also for me, I don't know if I have this contrarian energy in me, or what is it, defiant something, where someone says, you got to do this. And I'm like, no, even more so, not going to do it then. Like, you got to move to Toronto. Fuck you. No, I don't. Maybe I was thinking about it, but now I'm not. Like, it's like that kind of thing. Like, but I've said that so many times. It's like, now with the internet exists now. So there are so many ways to communicate. And that's the beauty of it. So many ways to communicate across spheres, to connect with people across, like, for example, an artist whom I adore, Witch Prophet from Ontario, and like Leilani and Sun make up Witch Prophet. And there's someone whom I've seen in the Canadian music landscape for years, who I was always so intimidated by, because I was just like, they are way cooler than me. And then I'm on TikTok one day doing a live, and Leilani comes into the chat and is like, I love you. And I was like, what? You know who I am? And then since then we connected. They've opened for me on tours. They're coming to Winnipeg to open like my big hometown shows. Like, and that was like one little comment in a live section. Me thinking that I have it all figured out of who doesn't like me or who doesn't think I'm cool, or like I'm not cool enough. And then they're just like, I love you. And I'm like, ah! And then we connected through that. And so there's so many like beautiful connective tissues of that wouldn't exist otherwise.
This idea of cool has been coming up a lot. I feel like as a student of the music business, and again, having a dad who had hundreds and hundreds of records, I would obsessively look at the people and the pictures on those albums and try to figure out who they were. And they were older and sexier. And I remember Rick Springfield had like veins in his forearms. I was like, man, one day I'll have veins in my forearms like Rick Springfield. He's so beautiful and so manly or whatever. But the idea of cool, maybe I will jump and make an assumption about you, and maybe wrongly, but you seem like somebody who is earnest. And in my study of cool over my entire life, I feel now like I've come up with this theory that you're either born cool or you're born earnest. And cool is something you are born with. And I think probably you and I know, because there's those people in music communities that are just bloody cool. Like, it's like, shit, how are they able to do whatever that is that they do? I can't do it. I wasn't born that way. And it's because in some ways the currency of cool is so strong that cool wins a lot of times. And for earnest people like me, and I'm assuming like you, like we wear our hearts on our sleeves. We know what cool people look like, but damn, I just will never be that cool person because I'm the loud, confident,
Not as much mystery. That's what I always was like, man. And with the
Right.
internet too, I'm just like, damn, so many people do this so well where they're like, single coming soon, and just a small caption. And I'm like, how do you write that few words? Like, how do you just say, like, Twitter was never something I was good at either, because I'm just like, and then it's like too many characters, and I'm like, oh fuck, like I can't. I'm just like not. I used to think that I wanted to be more mysterious, and then I realized I'm not a mysterious person. It's just not. That's not my artist ethos. Like, it's just not what it is.
There's other things, like I'm with you on the mystery front, and I'm not even sure that mystery works anymore. Not like it did in the 1960s and 70s. I don't know if I'm not even sure that modern audiences are interested in people being mysterious. Like, I think there's, because of the internet and what we expect from artists now, I think there's a sense that I should be able to peer into any artist's life and understand what they're doing in that very moment if I want or if I so choose. But this cool thing, only because you've mentioned it several times, whenever I'm interviewing artists, it always comes up, and it always comes up in passing, like they're cool and I'm not. Whether it's just that I'm drawn to interview artists that are fundamentally uncool, or whether all artists do fundamentally struggle with the idea or ability to see that possibly they're cool. Even my friends or people in my family, when I say, I'm not cool, but you are cool, look what you do. It's like, no. I know cool people, and I know what they look like, and I know how they act, and I am not that thing.
Yeah, that's okay.
As desperate. I know, but you had even said, like, the assumption, what are other people thinking about me? They think this whole thing in the music business, and now I'm a little older than you. I'm 48, and I've gone through like a big sort of spiritual upset this last year, and I've come around. And one of the things I really, really wish for myself is that I judge myself and others less. And when you're assuming somebody's thinking about you something, and what are they, that is a judgment in some ways. Like, that is a version of judgment, and it's a pollution in my mind. And hearing you say it, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be great for people like you and I to just be able to let go of this inner dialogue of, I wonder what they think, and oh my God, am I cool enough? And, oh, I can't even believe this person thinks I'm cool. And oh, what is it? Like, it's a lot of noise.
And I've let go of it so much more than I used to. I just had a therapy appointment yesterday, and she's always just like, you have such an inner critic. Your inner critic is very strong. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, and I feel like there's some service to part of that, like just to keep yourself grounded and
Totally.
and not to like self-obsessed. But at the same time, yeah, there's also a part of that that's like, also there's a part of that, to be fair. No one is waking up in the morning thinking about you, whether you're cool or not. They're thinking about themselves. They're waking up and they're thinking about how they got to have a coffee and watch they're not living and dying by whether or not you're cool to them or not. And that's also something that is just like, those things creep up for me, but I do really try to be intentional with like dissecting that in terms of like not letting it stop me do things. Like, not letting it stop me moving forward. And that used to be something maybe that held me back a little bit more. And I think, not that I hid in bands, but that it was easier for me in some ways to not be the person in the front, because there was only a certain level of like vulnerability I had to offer. And now with like starting Begonia, it's like, it's all you, bitch. What are you going to do? Like, and how are you going to embrace that, and also just be confident in what you offer? And that's something that I've definitely had to learn over the years, is just to be like, okay, cool, not cool, whatever that even means, you just are who you are. Step out on stage and be who you are, and don't apologize for it, and don't like second guess it.
That's all experienced person stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you and I were having this discussion, flashback 20 years, and we had that much less experience, and maybe to just round back around to the internet again, because I'm a Luddite. I prefer all the old fashioned stuff, but
Like an abacus, or like you like.
Yeah, like I wanted an abacus and cans connected by
Oh,
strings.
cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I would say about the Much Music and video universe and the fact that that the music business for a stretch there during the Video Killed the Radio Star era was that it was a beauty contest and that pretty people did get sort of put on TV. And that I do feel that with the internet, there is less inclination to judge music by the face that it's coming out of, because it's just not the way modern people are listening to music. I don't think. I could have this all wrong, but I get the sense that it's never been a better time to be a little bit older, because the internet is not checking your driver's license in the same way that the video era of the music business was. Do you think, or am I out to
I
lunch
think
on
it's about confidence. I think it's about how you put it out there, because people, the trolls are everywhere. So people are going to nitpick any little thing that you think someone might say, that they probably will. But it's about how you, like, if you think, doesn't matter how old you are, if I think, doesn't matter, put stuff out there, then I do feel like some of those fans then will come to you because they're not feeling this like desperate energy from you, or this energy of like, fuck, I guess I have to do this. I hate this, but I guess I got to do it for you because this is what you like.
Yeah.
It's like, I do think authenticity still wins, but there is like levels of that too. And it depends which game you're playing. Like, are you trying to be amongst the Miley Cyrus, Olivia Rodrigo, like new pop stars? Are you trying to be in that game? Then it's I think it will look different for you. But like, if you're like you, the royal you, but if you're just being yourself and trying to communicate your story, I think it's just authenticity always wins in my mind.
So the royal you brings me to the royal canoe.
Nice. Very nice.
I was recording in Vancouver with my little rock band called Mounties 10 years ago, and we were wandering around East Vancouver, probably with 11 wines in each of us. And one of the guys from one of the cool Vancouver bands was on the street having a cigarette and said, "You guys have got to come in. The best band in Canada is playing right now." And so we went down, and voila, it was Royal Canoe. Now, I knew Matt Schellenberg from years and years ago because I knew him from when he was a kid. He came in when I was operating as like a guest speaker for a Manitoba music thing. But it was a pretty mind-blowing thing to see that band, and to see the ingenuity, the commitment to that audacity of to be that different. I've always sort of watched them with some fascination, and I've even like, man, I'd like to make a record with those guys, because wouldn't that be cool? Now, you make records with those guys all the time. Did they start something? What is, like, they're really great, right? They're the real deal.
They are the real deal, and they're kind.
Yeah, and they're kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're sweeties. I mean, I'm biased because they're like my brothers at this point. But yeah, Matt Schellenberg was one of the first people who really encouraged me to kind of use my own voice, like to make my own music, basically. There were a couple like key people that I played with, Ariel Posen, Joey Landreth, Matt Schellenberg, who were very like, when Shikemin, when the meat was starting to expire in that band, like I feel like they kind of smelled it and they were like, "You're going to do this, right? You're finally going to do this, right?" And I was like, "No!" But then that, like, Matt was such an encouraging person, and I would work with him in the basement doing all these different like demo projects and stuff like that. And he was such a huge proponent and a confidence builder for me, and just a good friend. He got married just last weekend. Last weekend. Yeah, that's why Marcus was in town. Yeah.
Okay. Are they still living in LA, those two?
Yes, Matt and Matt, the Matts, Dead Matts, as they're lovingly called. They call themselves. Yes, they live in LA. They're making a go at it. Producers in the big city.
So I know we've already established that you don't have to leave Winnipeg to make a global impact, but let's talk about trying to break in the world coming out of Canada. Because I feel like I've looked at this and brought out the abacus and crunched the numbers in a lot of different possible ways. And it is harder to get into that place of recognition from Canada because from my assessment of things, like the music business or the entertainment business writ large is an American
Yeah.
invention. And they kind of run the star maker machine. And it's tough to run alongside. Like, I mean, we're always awash in a deluge of American entertainment. And I do think in this country, we do have a unique voice. There's a lot of famous Canadians that the world knows who their names are. They just bypassed the Canadian industry and went right to America. What are your thoughts on that? Years in the industry, like, is there any days where you wake up and go, damn it, like I should have been born in New York or I should have moved, like,
Yeah. But I wasn't. So then it's like, what can I do?
I know.
But I feel that. And I feel like, again, it kind of depends on what you're after, I think, too. And I see the Mats moving to LA and they are after just a different kind of career where it's like they want to be producers. They are producers, but they want to work with a ton of different people. And Winnipeg, the pool is a bit smaller and they've worked with almost everyone here in a way. Like, so they wanted to kind of branch out and see what they can do. And I so respect that. And it's just not, I always have this like alternate life living in my mind of like what could have been, not always, but I used to more so, of what could have been if I would have XYZ, like gone to New York and tried to be on Broadway, for example. And then I left that behind. I'm like, no, actually, I wouldn't have liked that. Or like gone to LA and tried to be in the scene and there's but it's just like, I grew up in Winnipeg. My family lives here. I really love my family. I love touring. I've cultivated such a wonderful creative atmosphere here where like if I want to make a wacky ass video or put on a photo shoot, I have these pools of people that are constantly kind of replenishing with other little freaks that I meet every month of like, oh, actually I'm a creative and I want to do that. And I appreciate being a part of that here. Like I could go to LA and drown in the sea of pop stars trying to make it, or I could be here cultivating kind of a music community here, but still leaving. Like I still want to go and spend a month in LA or a month in New York, but like I don't have to live there to do that in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes everything I'm interested to hear somebody like you wrestle with that because it's something that, again, I can look back with some regret and go, oh yeah, there was a couple of things I could have done in order to shore this thing up. But little things that I play in my mind are, okay, I never won the big prize. I came awfully close. And in some ways, by not winning,
what's the big prize?
like getting $1 million and having people know who you are, and in that big way, like not the, in that big way, it has meant that I have maintained a nose to the grindstone way of being for almost 30 years now, and I feel like in some ways, if I was like, to die and have a sit down with my God once I'm dead, I would be thanks a lot for the gift that was a long life of creating stuff with interesting people. But when you do sit down and contrast that with, oh, I never won the big $1 million or got the thing that everybody knew my name. I've got a friend here in my little town who was a silver medalist at the Olympics, and we talk on our walks that we do on Monday mornings about how so rarely is moderate success celebrated.
Yeah.
And I think in Canada, there's a lot of people who have very fascinating moderate success that is very worth celebrating because for what you're saying is that you never had to turn into an asshole. You never had to go into a dark place. You never had to become somebody different for your family. Like you decided to choose life, if I'm being honest, and to quote George Michael, over fame, and I got right up close to the fame thing, and it was like, man, this is a big sacrifice. Like, you're not allowed to be you in there. Once you go in that thing, you do sacrifice you. I think I never walked through the door, but I got real close.
That's the thing, though, and I don't really. I think there's some things that I'm learning that I'm not willing to sacrifice. So then, be it as it may, like then things will just be as they are in some ways. But I mean, I've been gifted with a lot of great successes and surprises amongst that too. And I'm not just laying down being like, I guess this is just the way it'll be for me. I'm still in a hustling mode, but I just think there are so many different ways. It's not the same as it used to be in some ways, where it's like, you got to do this and you got to do that and send your demo tape to this person. And then that's the way that you get to, there are millions of different roads to have a successful career. And also it's like, what is the definition of success to you? And that's kind of what I am constantly figuring out as well. And as you said, it's a long life to always be longing. You have a song.
Goodness. Oh, come on.
That was the record that I got the most into when I was like late teens in church. I had a crush on this dude and he was going to your show. But I thought maybe he was going to get me a ticket, but he didn't. So then I didn't go and protest, but whatever.
This is all very fascinating. You have a real buoyancy, which I'm sure you know, and even that you brought up being on Broadway, like you emit a youthful positivity and exuberance that is it's nice to feel, nice to be around. Like I could see you being on stage in those capacities. Like somebody who comes along with your amount of raw ability, like you could shift gears and do that. If you
Oh, and I've
wanted.
been told so many times because I've gotten the Adele comparisons, like since I started singing, basically. And I've gone to different, and I don't know if you've done like different songwriting camps kind of vibes where like you go to a remote place and you're with all these different songwriters of different ages and you're all trying to write a hit together or whatever for XYZ company. And I've done that. And the first thing people say to me is like, why don't you just do like a big ballad, do a big, like, you could do this in that way. But it's like, okay, well, you're referencing something that's already been done, A. B, that's just not, that's something that's maybe the thing that was my struggle. Is like there have been so many times where I could have written this song, or I've had this song on the back burner with this collaborator that I don't believe in, but it sounds like a hit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the one that people are like, sounds like a hit. And it's like, so this is the time where my definition of like integrity or whatever comes in. Like, and then sometimes when people say that enough, you start to kind of feel like, okay, well, maybe I don't care. Maybe this is great. I don't even know anymore. Like,
Yeah.
but I feel like now with like having just put out my second record, like as a solo artist, I feel like I know even more now my voice. But to be fair, I also feel like I'm constantly rediscovering it because I'm not scholastically trained. I feel like I still have things to discover about my own voice, but that's part of it as well.
This moving the goalposts around the idea of success is big for me because you do take it on the chin a little bit in this industry, and I'm grateful for my career, and even in my year of my big spiritual rewrite, one of the big quotes that jumps out at me is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And whenever you sort of like look at anything where you feel like that you were victimized in a moment or that something should have happened that didn't, that really what you didn't realize is that there was a gift wrapped somewhere in there that was for you to unwrap and figure out what it was that you were supposed to learn or do
like
that
that.
was in fact, right? That's the thing. But I've had to sort of over the years, even though I'm grateful for what has been built and all of that, to move the goalposts around how one defines success has sort of been important in my maintenance of sanity.
Absolutely.
You're in that right now. Are you like? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what is that?
Constantly.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
for you?
Well, I mean, when I was a teenager, because I didn't really like. My dad is a visual artist, and my mom worked at a bank, like as a teller, and there wasn't like. We didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't like necessarily like a thing where it's like, oh yeah. So I would watch TV and that would be my version of like what success was. So it was like, okay, Canadian Idol. So I tried out for Canadian Idol when I was 15. And I'm so glad that nothing happened there because again, it's the same thing. It's like everything. I thought that doing that was success in some way because that's how you sing. Like I didn't know how to be a singer. Like I watched a lot of television and that seemed like a way that people sang in public. I didn't go very far with that, but it's like, so then that, but then after that, and then a year later when I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad actually that I didn't go further with that because that would have been a whole level of things to navigate. But then that, like, the goalpost started moving very early for me. And I feel like was like a late bloomer in some ways too, and like discovering my solo voice. Like I started this project when I was 27. So for some people that's a late start in terms of like going on your own, but I have always had a youthful spirit, I guess, about it all because it's like, I don't know. I still feel like I'm 23 in some ways, but then I also sometimes feel like I'm 80 in terms of when I roll out of the van when I've been sitting too long. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm 80. Maybe I don't do this anymore. But it's like I still have that that hopefulness, that desire for joy. That doesn't mean that there aren't Enter Sandman moments in my life, because I definitely like have embraced that I go through dips, and that's something that instead of being afraid of those dips as much now, I just kind of embrace them, and I'm like, okay, today you are very depressed, so why don't you be a little compassionate to yourself today? It's not like, get out of it, this isn't allowed. It's like, no, this is just, actually, now that you've gotten to know yourself a bit better, this is just a part of who you are, and that's trying to learn about myself more, you know. I think you understand.
It's important stuff. I mean, in some ways, that's the work of the artist. Like not that I'm here to unfurl my personal therapy from the audience, but a certain amount of judicious self-examination is a lot about how one arrives at the want to communicate through song. I just don't see how you get down to the business of writing if you don't have an eyeball that's sort of positioned 6 inches above the top of your head that is looking at all the inner voices, all the loathing, all the big questions, all the strange duality and paradox of having a lot of confidence and then somehow no confidence. Like if you don't have an eyeball that's living just outside of your head and watching the drama unfold in your own mind, I don't know. Then I'm lost. What are you writing about? And I know that there are songwriters who write stories and say, oh, like there's Billy and Jenny or whatever, those types. But then I don't know how to write about anything other than myself. And in which case, then I don't know, if I'm not watching myself very carefully, then I don't know what I'm going to write. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, that's true for me as well. I sometimes think that I'm writing about other people, and I'll start a song and I'm like, well, by the end of it, I'm like, nah, that's me. Okay, cool. There it is again. But it's like, but that's just kind of, if I'm ever in like the position to be like a mentor to others now, which is so hilarious to me, not hilarious, but so interesting to me that I get asked to do like be on panels or be like a mentor, because I'm like, I am still a diaper baby to myself sometimes, but whatever. But then I'm telling people like, write what you know, basically. Like no one can take your story from you. You are a unique individual. You can try to write about, sometimes it's fun to write about going to the club and ripping shit up and whatever, if that's something that you've done and you enjoy doing it and you have a unique perspective on it. But like, you were born into your own unique body and your own unique mind, and that's what people want to hear, is your perspective. But
yeah. They don't want to hear my new single "Rippin' at the Club" because it will be a fantasy based in no reality.
Like we could write a song called "Rippin' Up the Club," and like that couldn't be.
Can you imagine a couple of no cool people just talking about ripping in the club? Speaking of no cool, I won't keep you much longer, but 2 more things. You're on the Polaris shortlist. That is cool. Like, is that not like definitive, like ironclad? Set in copper, somebody stamps it forever. Cool.
That feels
for the
cool
rest
to me. I must admit, it does feel cool.
That got cool.
It's one of those things, though. Like, if I weren't to be on the short list, I'd be like, "Fuck that." Not even
I
close. Like,
knew it. I know it's not cool.
didn't even need to do that. Like, fuck that shit. And now that I'm on it, I'm like, it's pretty cool. No, I find it very fun. I find it very fun because it's just like putting a record out, and the shit that you do in your basement and you're tinkering and whatever. And when we were making this record, it was during like lockdown season where we didn't even know, like, is this going to be heard? Will we even tour this? Blah, blah, blah. Like all that shit. So you're just making this, and then it ends up in this teeny little file on the internet, and you're like, that's it? It's done? And then someone picks it up 6 months later and is like, I'd like to award you with this, like, in the short list, just like this kind of recognition. And also, we're going to do some deep dives of your records. People are talking about it, dissecting it. I'm like, what a fun little gift this is. Like, not little, but what a fun gift it is to just hear people listening to it and talking about it. It's like, you don't always get that with the art that you put out. And that's like the most interesting part to me, is just getting that boost, but then also hearing how people perceive it. Like, it's just so interesting to me.
How people perceive what, the recognition or
the music itself. Like, they did like a CBC thing where like they have panels talking about it, and you're just like, what? Like, you listen to it and you're talking about, like, it's just very cool to me. Also, to be like a peer to like people that I have looked up to, like Feist or like whatever, like people that I've looked up to forever.
Yeah, it's heavy.
It just feels cool. It feels cool to me.
You could have also played the whole, like, I'm not really about awards, but
but I mean, yeah, sure. Like, I've said that.
But I will say this, that as an old fart from the late 20th century, there are this, like, the continued celebration of excellence in music in the way that these award shows seek to do it, or the Polaris Prize seeks to do it. What I love is that in the face of a culture that has sort of retitled people who make stuff as content creators, and that the stuff they make is now content. And what I like to joke around my house is that my favorite content creators were the Beatles. And when you sort of frame it in that way, it starts to, like, it becomes quite clear what we're talking about. The contrast is that perhaps our culture has, in an attempt to maybe dumb down the seriousness of what it is artists do, we now are just like, well, that's because just anybody can do that because it's just a content creator and somebody creating content. Polaris Prize, I think what is wonderful is that it seeks to reimagine what comes out of people like you and others who are making records that are current, that it's an artist seeking excellence, and that artists who seek excellence bring something to the conversation that is important, illuminating, and that the society would suffer if that thing wasn't there. And how wonderful is that? To me, it's a nice contrast to this idea of just sit down and eat your content. Get down there, eat your mushy content. Like, the fact that somebody great like you with this voice and these incredible songs who's making this impact can be celebrated for what it really is, something remarkable, as opposed to just more TikTok horseshit. How great is that?
I very much appreciate it for that reason as well. And yeah, I have been in interviews, people being like, how do you feel? And I've definitely said, you don't do it for the awards, but when the recognition comes your way, doesn't it feel nice? And I do mean that though.
Sure.
And like my mother always says, it's a pleasure to be nominated, because I've been nominated for many different things and lost a few different things. When I was nominated for a Juno 2 years ago, it was during lockdown, so it was all on Zoom. And I remember being at first kind of sad that I didn't get to like be at the parties. But then when I lost, I was like, closed my computer. Bye. Just was like at home, like see y'all later. I don't want to party with you anyways. Bye. Boop. Just closed it. Felt good.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate you chatting today, and good luck with the Polaris Prize. Oh, one more thing. I did read somewhere that you have an EP coming out, Marigold.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You want to sell that?
All right, everybody, listen up. We've got a big EP coming out, the Marigold EP. It's like a reimagining of one of my favorite songs off the record, And it's like a song that was really short to begin with. And I thought, oh, maybe this song, and I'm not a person of brevity, generally speaking, but then this song just came out so short and it felt like it's done. But then when we inspected it more and when we started playing it live more, I noticed how people took to the song and I was like, maybe I do have more to say. So we made an extended version of the song. And then I got 3 different people to do remixes of Marigold, which I've never had people do on my stuff before. It's always interesting to hear like different people's interpretations with the stems and stuff, like what they do. Did that sell it?
Yeah, coming this Thursday, September 14th, the Marigold EP, one extended version, 3 remixes, and a music video that I edited myself on my phone. Now that's content.
Begonia, Alexa, thank you so much for being on Stumble Forward. What a delight. Everything everybody said about you is true, plus, and what a delight. And I'm so glad that I've made this connection with you.
Yes.
And now I feel like we need to do something. Like even, should we make a piece of theater? I don't know. Maybe we'll get old and then we'll do some theater in 20 years. But thank you for
20
doing
years?
this chat. It's a long life to always be longing.
So true, though. It's so true.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. It's very nice to meet you.
You too.
The Stumble Forward is an Isadora Media production and is hosted by Hawksley Workman and produced by Jennifer Kavanaugh. Be sure to subscribe and follow The Stumble Forward. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Hawksley Workman. Thank you for listening.
Stumble forward, the stumble forward.